Welcome to Future Squared, the podcast all about corporate innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-empowerment. Future Squared brings you a double dose of innovation inspiration every week to help you and your company stay relevant in an era of rapid change and 10x your results in both your professional and personal life. Each week, I'll bring you corporate innovators, entrepreneurs, authors, keynote speakers, and thought leaders such as Steve Blank, David Allen, Brad Feld, Tim Harford, Karen Dillon, Jenny Blake, Neil Patel, Rand Fishkin, Pascal Finette, Ryan Blair, and Ash Moria, to name just a few. While every Friday, I'll bring you Fast Fix Friday, some quick, digestible insights to help you end your week on a high as you head off for the weekend. Future Squared is brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation hub school and consultancy based in Melbourne, Australia and Singapore that works with companies to help them adopt the mindset, methods and tools to navigate change and survive and thrive in an era of rapid disruption. If your organization needs help coming up with ideas, testing and turning ideas into reality, incubating teams, driving cultural change, or connecting and partnering with startups, then visit www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Welcome back to Future Squared. Today I'm super excited to bring you Carrie Green. She's the founder of the Female Entrepreneur Association, an online platform to inspire and empower female entrepreneurs from around the world to turn their ideas into a reality and build successful businesses. FEA publishes a monthly digital magazine, This Girl Means Business, weekly videos, and hosts live online masterclasses. With over 400,000 women now involved, it's become one of the fastest growing networks for female entrepreneurs. Carrie has also just released her first book, She Means Business, which is killing it on Amazon, and hosts a podcast of the same name, which is for ambitious female entrepreneurs who are on or are contemplating the entrepreneurial path. So without further ado, I bring you the one, the only, Carrie Green. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, and you're joining us all the way from sunny Manchester.
Sunny. It actually is quite sunny today, surprisingly.
Well,
Makes a change.
That is surprising. And Manchester would have to be home to one of my favourite bands of all time, the mighty Oasis.
Oh, I love them too.
How can you not? So you're originally from Manchester?
I am, yes.
Oh, fantastic. So are you blue or red?
Red. Well, actually, no, I don't really like football. I'm more of a rugby person.
Oh, one of those.
I am one of those.
Fair enough. Look, I think first up, congratulations are in order. Your first book, I believe, She Means Business, came out on February 21, and I looked at Amazon earlier today. You've got something like 480 reviews, 5-star ratings, and currently it's sitting at number 8 in the new business enterprise category and something like number 50 in the entrepreneurship category. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been crazy.
Yeah, did you embark upon much of a book tour to spread the word, or?
I didn't do a book tour because everything I do is online, so I just really wanted to leverage the internet for it. But I have to be honest, I really didn't know what I was doing. And so I was just going all out with just trying to do everything I possibly could, which ended up making me feel like a headless chicken. But thankfully it's paid off.
Yeah. I mean, how many of us really know what we're doing in entrepreneurship? It's a matter of just getting out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, just trying things and seeing what sticks. But we'll explore the book in a few moments. But first, I wanted to go back to 2005 when a 20-year-old Carrie Green started her first business. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was random. I didn't know what I was doing, but no, basically it came about because I was at university, ran out of money, basically spent too much on buying clothes and going out, and realized I needed to figure out what on earth I was going to do. And so I was actually on Google trying to find jobs and didn't find anything remotely appealing. And then this random opportunity came up for me to be a reseller unlocking phones. So weird. I didn't know what it was, but basically it was a system that was already set up. So what I needed to do is create a website and then get people to the website and get people to buy from me. So of which I knew nothing. So, but I was like, this sounds way more fun than actually any other job opportunities. So I just thought, I'm going to go for it, and quickly realized I didn't know what to do. Asked like anyone I could for help, got on Google again, put together the world's worst website on Microsoft front page, and then realized I needed to get people to the website, and heard about Google AdWords. So I went exploring that, and with a credit card and a small spending limit every day, the business was pretty much up and running. And from there on out, it was just trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this work?
Yeah, it's funny you dropped a Microsoft front page and brought back a lot of memories from my youth as well, dabbling away with that. But this business evolved over the course of time to something called the Phone Unlockers, which became one of the leading online phone unlocking sites worldwide. And you also had quite a big social media following on YouTube, and the videos, I think, collectively received something like 500,000 views. So is that still
Yeah.
going on in the background, or?
No, I stopped doing that in 2012.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was incredible. It really taught me so much about business, and it really made me realize actually that the online world is just this incredible kind of gold mine that anyone can tap into. You know, there I was, 20 years old, not got a clue in the world what the heck I was doing, but managed to turn it into a huge success. And it just goes to show what's possible, really.
Definitely, and I think that's something I'm a big believer in, entrepreneurship, and particularly the internet just being the great sort of leveler. It just levels the playing field for absolutely anybody to get out there and just start, making magic happen. And on making magic happen, was business something you always knew you wanted to get into? I mean, were there any telltale signs of a young Carrie Green at the age of 8 maybe selling lemonade or something along those lines?
We did have a kids club that I started with my brothers and sister, where we used to charge the other kids on the street to come over. How random. No, but my dad's he's entrepreneurial, and I've grown up with that my whole life. But I don't know necessarily whether I thought I'm going to start my own business, but what I did know was that I really wanted to live an amazing life. Yeah. So my dad, he's really into personal development, so he would send us, he sent me and my two brothers and sister on a course when we were about 9 or 10 to learn about the power of the mind and visualization, where we'd visualize our futures. I mean, it was insane. And so especially as a teenager, he bought me the Cosmic Ordering books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Sean Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers, and I knew that I wanted my life to be amazing. And funnily, at the time, I related that back to becoming an actress, because people who I saw that were doing what looked like extraordinary things were actresses, because they were the people that were in the spotlight. They were the people that, everyone else knew their name. So I decided for a little while I wanted to be an actress, and went off to acting school and realized I actually couldn't act to save my life. So quickly did a U-turn on that one. But yeah, I think there was a deep desire to want to see what was possible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said there about your dad gifting you the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers and Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I'm not a dad yet, but I've always said that when I'm going to give my kids, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when they're 10 years old to read. So it's actually good to know that it works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was sat in front of the TV when I was about 12 watching videotapes of Jim Rohn.
Oh, wow.
So...
That's awesome. That's awesome. But that's all effectively the power of mindset, right? Having that belief instilled in you from a young age can have untold benefits later in life.
Definitely.
And I mean, you graduated, I believe, with a degree in law from Birmingham University. So I imagine there was there a bit of social pressure from peers, potentially parents, teachers, society, to go on and practice law, as opposed to go down this other much riskier path? I know you mentioned you got onto Google and there weren't many jobs going. Was that more or less kind of like a sliding doors moment, or?
Well, I was obviously running my business. I started that at the end of first year, so I was running that throughout my second and third year of university. And then when I graduated, I felt like I was at a strange place where the business was doing really well. I think it was. So in my third, I didn't actually, the only people that knew I was running the business were the people who I lived with. I didn't tell anyone else. So, but by my third year, I had turned my financial situation around so much that I bought myself a Mercedes SLK. Nice. And by the time we graduated, the business was, I think it was probably turning over about £10,000 a month. So it was really phenomenal what it was what it was generating, what it was creating. It was crazy. So that really excited me because I realized the possibilities. But at the same time, I I didn't know whether I should keep going down the law route. I never actually wanted to be a lawyer, but it was a teacher at school that said, Carrie, why don't you study law? And I was like, oh, okay. And and funnily enough, I used to always be the dumb kid and the one in the bottom sets at school, being told that I was not clever enough and I had learning difficulties. And it was actually through the personal development stuff my dad gave me and through his persistence of telling me, you can do whatever you set your mind to doing. If you want to make something happen, you can make it happen. And this light bulb moment as a teenager of thinking, I don't want to fail. I don't want to be one of those people. I need to figure this out. And figuring it out, that's the turning point that made me realize we are capable of so much more than what we think. I remember when I was studying for my law degree, and I would not class myself as a naturally intelligent person at all. I really wouldn't. And at university, I was surrounded by these seemingly really intelligent people, but somehow I was managing to run my business and to at the same time get a really good law degree. When they were all like, a lot of them would say it's so hard, it's really difficult. And I noticed how interesting it was, the language they were using to describe the experience they were having. And while you can be really intelligent, maybe you don't have the mental strength or stamina or mindset to actually get you to where you want to be. And I feel like that was my advantage because I did. And I knew that I could build a really successful business and get an amazing law degree at the same time. So really powerful. But then after that, I applied for, over in the UK, after you do your law degree, you apply for something called the law practitioner's course. And I applied for that, got my place, and then deferred. And luckily, I managed to get work experience in the with the in-house legal team at Warner Brothers in London, which was an amazing opportunity. Yeah. So I went down there to do the work experience, and I thought, if this doesn't make me want to be a lawyer, I don't know what will, because working for such a cool company. So I went down, worked with them, and they actually had said they have an intern scheme. So if you do your LPC, you go and work in industry for a year. And they said they have one space available. And they told me, if you go and do your LPC, you can come and have that space here. So I had that kind of opportunity on the table. But while I was working for them, I felt like I had a little bell jar over me. I felt so suffocated, and I was desperate to go out there and do my own thing and explore. And while the environment at Warner Brothers was so nice, so amazing, and it was really, really cool, I knew in my heart that it wasn't for me. And so that really helped me to decide, okay, I'm doing this entrepreneurship thing. That's what I'm going to do in my life. And let's go. So that's how it transpired into me just going for it full time.
No, that's awesome. You've touched on a hell of a lot of areas that I could explore further there. I mean, there was the thing about, being 17, your teacher telling you to go on and study law, which I think is something that so many of us have gone through. You're kind of forced to choose your career at the age of 17 when you haven't got the faintest clue about life. And oftentimes it can be a snowballing effect. You decide to do a degree and you've said, okay, I've already committed 3, 4, 5 years to this degree, so I'm going to now go and work as a lawyer, as an accountant, as a consultant, and you fall into, I suppose, that sort of echo chamber of the people you hang out with, and that becomes your path in life. So it takes a lot to break people out of that. And I guess in your case, because you started the business young whilst you were still in uni, it became a much easier transition to say, okay, I've tried this law stuff, I feel a little bit suffocated, business seems to be going well, it's quite empowering, I'm going to go off and focus on that.
Yeah, definitely. It was probably easier for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned there were so many smart people at university who you were surrounded by, but the rhetoric, their language was often, I suppose, suggested that they weren't mentally strong. And, I like to say that there's a lot of smart people in the world, but how many are really making an impact and going out there and trying to make the world a better place? And that's what entrepreneurship gives us the opportunity to do.
Exactly.
Great. So, you mentioned something earlier about visualization, and I partook in a Spartan race a couple of weeks ago, a crazy obstacle course where you're lugging yourself through mud. And as someone who meditated for a while, for the last couple of years, read a lot about visualization, but never did it. I did it this morning during the race and I basically just envisaged all of those negative sort of emotions, all of the physical challenges that I'd face in that day and how I would overcome them. And it really helped me. And I know you're a big advocate of visualization. How do you incorporate it into, say, your professional life?
So for me, I love to use it as a tool to just get myself all to experience the things I want, I suppose. And so, for example, a couple of years ago, I was nominated for an award that I really wanted to win. So I would, every night before going to bed, I had a guided visualization actually that I would listen to, where it was like full of success affirmations, and then it kind of gave you space to create a movie in your mind of experiencing what it was you wanted to achieve. So every night I would imagine being stood on the stage. I would hear the person say, and the winner is Carrie Green. I would hear the crowd cheering. I'd feel the excitement, and then I knew that the person who won was going to get a mentoring session in a helicopter with someone called Lord Billamoria. And so I would imagine getting in the helicopter, having conversations with him. I'd imagine looking out the window and saying to myself, you knew you'd be here, and here you are. And so it was really intense, and the more I did it, the more vivid it became, and the more it kind of expanded in my mind as I visualized it. And so when the award ceremony came round, I remember being stood on that stage, which oddly was like what I had visualized in my head, and then heard the person say, and the winner is Carrie Green, and heard the crowd cheer, the feeling of excitement. And now I can't distinguish between what actually happened in real life and what happened in my head. And I always think, like, who knows, maybe visualization's got nothing to do with it. But the point I find with visualization is that it's fun, because who doesn't like sitting there in their own little world daydreaming about the things they want to achieve? But also I feel like it brings it into your reality every day. Every day I was bringing that into my reality. Every day I was thinking to myself, how can I make sure that I win this competition? And it's the same with anything, like when I'm visualizing my book success and things like that. For example, I used the visualization technique a lot with writing the book, because I found it so difficult to write the book and get out of my own way. And so I'd visualize being at my laptop and the words flowing through me really, really easily. I would imagine getting to the end of the manuscript and being like, oh my gosh, this is done, and sending it to Hay House. I would imagine Hay House emailing me being like, Carrie, this is great. I would imagine the first time I saw the physical copy of my book, and I'd visualize all these things so vividly. And it really helped me to realize and to trust that somehow I was going to make it happen, and that one day my book would be in my hands. And I just had to stay focused on that, because I think otherwise you can get so caught up in the stress and the doubts and the worries that you lose perspective, and it really keeps you stuck for longer. So visualization for me enables me to move from a place of perhaps sometimes feeling really stuck to a place of just knowing and trusting deep down that, you know what, this might be my reality today, but it's not going to be my reality moving forward, because I am going to keep going and I'm going to make this happen. So I think it's just so powerful. Like Muhammad Ali used to do it, and he used to call it his future history, where he would just visualize a fight so much in his head that he said, well, the time when he went out into the ring, he'd be so mentally prepared for it. And he used to predict the rounds that he was going to knock someone out in, because he'd visualized it so vividly in his mind. He just knew with certainty that that's what was going to happen. And obviously so many athletes use it, and it's incredible. And what's really interesting scientifically is that when we visualize it, it creates these neural pathways in our mind, and our mind can't actually distinguish between when we are visualizing something and when we're doing it. And so it kind of like strengthens up those pathways. And I find that so fascinating. So I just think everyone needs to be visualizing and working those like muscles in their mind to make them stronger and stronger, to help them to actually create the life they want.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of athletes use it, a lot of keynote speakers. I spoke with Eric Weil recently on the podcast, who's a graffiti artist / keynote speaker, and he's spoken at places like Dallas Stadium in front of 80,000 corporate executives, and he would say the same thing, that he would visualize getting out there, connecting with the audience, and just absolutely dominating and just painting something that would just totally connect with everyone in the crowd. And it comes back to athletes as well. Oftentimes people say, hey, when you're out there on the field, on the pitch, whatever it is, your natural ability, your physical ability is like 10, 20% of it. Your mental focus is everything else. And visualization is one way that people can get over some of those mental barriers. And I know you've spoken a lot and wrote on the topic of belief. And it sounds as if for you, visualization is one of those sort of tools in your arsenal to foster that belief, right?
Yeah, I call it, I have my bag of magic mindset tricks.
Yes. So what are some of the other tricks?
Some of the other ones are, well, there's loads, but for example, just having an inspirational playlist of music. So I often find, especially when building a business, there are so many ups and downs, and I need to have those tricks there to help keep me going. And so, for example, often when you're feeling unmotivated or you're doubting yourself, what you really need is to get yourself inspired again and get yourself in that place where you've got this feeling in the pit of your stomach that you can make it happen. And so for simple things like the music playlist that I have a list on Spotify, which is kind of the most random collection of music ever. And so when I feel frustrated or like stuck in a place of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, I'll go and listen to those songs and then let it empower me. Because music is so powerful. When you're walking down the street and a good song comes on, you like feel like you want to just like have like a little bit more of a leap in your step. Yeah,
and it can totally take you back to another time when you were like at your most resourceful state, or you're away on holiday and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. And the same with like I have inspirational video playlists on YouTube. And so, you know, if you go and watch a bit of Tony Robbins or Les Brown, you can't not feel inspired. Same with movies as well, like having a go-to feel-good movies to watch that will just empower me, because those things, they're all so emotive, and I think when we we use tools that will create that emotion within us, it can really shift us from a place of feeling, oh, I don't know if I can make this happen, to a place of, you know what, this is my life, I'm going to make this happen. So those things really help. And just listening to personal development, like going on Audible, downloading books and listening to that kind of stuff, or podcasts. And then all sorts of journaling, writing everything out, everything, you know, you can't keep everything stuck in your head. And having vision boards, but on my vision boards, as well as having obviously my goals up there, I also put words on there. For example, I always put a statement that says whatever is on this board is, so that every time I pin something new to my board, I'm like, this is a done deal. And I also have the word trust on my board, so that when I'm looking at these goals and some of them seem really far-fetched, instead of looking at them thinking, oh, this is like really far-fetched, I'm never going to make this happen, I then look at the word trust and I think, no, Carrie, trust that one day this will be your reality, and trust that it already is. You just aren't experiencing it right now. And so things like that for me are so powerful, and having quotes everywhere. And I remember this one quote from when I was in my first year of building FEA. It was, successful people hang on when everyone else has let go. And I would look at that quote from time to time, and I'd say to myself, Carrie, you have to hang on, you have to keep going. And just stuff like that, it's so powerful. And funnily enough, the more successful people I speak to, the more I realize that they do all this stuff too. And I'm like, it's not just me. Like the people who are really having the breakthroughs are the ones that are conditioning themselves every single day for success. It's in their surroundings. They not only through the people they spend time with, but it's in the books on their bookshelf. It's on the quotes or the pictures on their walls. And it's really interesting. And it makes such a difference when you immerse your life in that. You get intentional about creating it.
Yeah, and it's like Zig Ziglar famously said, you are who you are and where you are because of what you put into your mind, and you can change that by changing what goes into your mind. And that is what you surround yourself with, what you read, what you listen to, who you hang out with, all that kind of stuff just basically conditions you for a certain mindset and certain actions. And you mentioned surrounding yourself with quotes, and on top of my monitor in the office I have "The Obstacle is the Way," which I stole from Ryan Holiday, his book of the same name. But it's just about making friends with challenges, because as an entrepreneur you're going to face countless setbacks, but you need to appreciate that that's part of the journey. And if you make friends with that, it makes it much easier to go on, rather than, like you said, give up.
Couldn't agree more. You have to honor the process. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we've touched on belief. That's one thing. And you mentioned Tony Robbins, and he likes to say, you can run east as fast as you like chasing the sunset, but you're not going to see one. So what we need is a strategy, right? So your book uncovers or unpacks a number of different strategies that budding female entrepreneurs can use to increase their likelihood of success. So what can they expect to learn by way of strategies by reading your book?
Well, I kind of touch on the things that have really helped me to build a successful business. And like kind of for me, what's really at the heart and soul of it all is, well, a community, which I think people miss a lot in business. We kind of think, right, we set out with this business and we get into the trap of thinking it's all about ourselves because we're focused on our own goals, when really it's about our audience and how we can actually cultivate an audience of like-minded people who really truly resonate with our message and who stand for what we stand for. And I think when you can do that, you can just have such a huge impact on people. That's the point at which you get people to fall in love with your brand. So I talk a lot about obviously people getting clear on what their business mission is, what's really at the heart and soul of what they're doing, what they stand for, and then how they can relate that to their audience, how they can communicate and connect with their audience in a way that they are going to get it to. And I tell stories of brands that are really incredible where they've done such a good job at creating a phenomenal experience for their audience. And I think that's the key. We have to create phenomenal experiences, no matter what it is we're doing, whether you're creating a podcast or you're putting a new lead magnet together or you're putting a post out on social media. Is that constant thing of like, what experiences is this creating for my audience? Why are they going to love this? How is this going to add value to them? And just constantly coming from a place of service. So it talks a lot about that. And then, yeah, obviously the other piece of, okay, so you've got all that in place. How on earth do you get your audience to actually discover you?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to that, I talk about the fact that it is, the online world now, there are so many different tools to use. There's so many different social media platforms and it can become so overwhelming. And I think a lot of people try to do it all. They feel this real pressure that they're going to miss out if they're not doing it all. But in actual fact, you can have a breakthrough much faster when you get focused on just one strategy. And the analogy that I use to kind of put it into perspective is the fact that if you wanted to learn to play a musical instrument and you said you were going to learn the piano, the clarinet, the saxophone, the drums, you would probably you wouldn't make very much not progress, and it'd be so bloody frustrating. You'd be so overwhelmed trying to figure everything out. But if you decided, right, I'm just going to learn to play the piano and that's it, and you practiced every single day, within a year you're going to be so much better. You're going to have a huge breakthrough, in comparison to if you're trying to play all four instruments. And it's the same with anything. It's the same when you're trying to grow your business. If you choose that you're going to do like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, whatever the heck you want to use, then you're going to be hopping from one to the next to the next. And sure, you might make some progress, but you're going to be so overwhelmed. Whereas if you strip it back and say, right, Facebook is going to be the biggest platform for me. I'm going to test it out and I'm going to become an expert at this. I'm going to put my focus and effort into it and I'm going to have a breakthrough. And if you do that and then you consistently work at getting better and better and better at it, you are going to have a breakthrough. You are going to figure out stuff that's going to really enable you to skyrocket your business. And I think that's exactly what I did when I was building the Female Entrepreneur Association. And that's literally what enabled me to have huge breakthroughs. And I think people just hop all over the place far too much. So I think it's just a really important strategy, especially at the beginning of starting a business. So yeah, I talk about all sorts of stuff, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess what you mentioned there, I think it's really important to just reiterate that by doing one thing at a time, by getting, having those breakthroughs, you're starting to build momentum and just reinforcing that belief in yourself that you can do this. Whereas if you try to bite off more than you can chew and try to get onto Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and Snapchat and then learn Google Analytics and AdWords and everything all into one time, you're probably going to freak out and eventually say, oh, this is all too hard bollocks. I'm going to go back and work for some big corporate, which, yeah, and ultimately that's what happens with a lot of people because there's, and there's that, but then I also see a lot of entrepreneurs maybe just diving in a little bit too deep too early and maybe investing say $20,000 or $30,000 in a prototype based on an idea that's been untested. It fails. They're like, okay, I'm 30 grand in the hole. I'm done with this. I'm going to go and get a real job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's why it all comes back to testing and then also trying to build your audience up so that you've got that foundation on which to then go and test your product ideas or service ideas with. It's just key. I think that just the business world's changed so much. And so much of it now is about the relationship that we build with our audience. And the great thing is that every single one of us can do that. And it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money to be on Facebook or to be on Instagram. A friend of mine recently, she had a baby, and then when Harry was 6 months old, she decided that she wanted to do something for herself. And so she decided she was going to start creating these nursery prints for the walls of children's nurseries. And she put an Etsy shop together, she got on Instagram, and within a few months she's got over 10,000 followers and hundreds of sales in her Etsy shop, because she's like really drilled it down, got focused, and got clear on how she's serving her audience every day. And she's sticking at one thing. She's not trying to do it all. She's just laser focused. And that's why she's had breakthroughs. And that's all it really takes. It is building a business is simple, though it never feels it. But it really is. And I feel like it's constantly about taking a step back and stripping it back and getting clear on, okay, these are the core things that I need to be focusing on day in, day out to create growth. But so many people just end up becoming like a headless chicken, trying to do it all and then wondering why they're not making any progress.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that day in, day out thing. One of my favorite quotes, I believe, it's from a Chinese philosopher. The name escapes me at the moment, but it is that a river cuts through rock, not through its power, but through its persistence, right? It's that day in, day out, habitual sort of just do it mentality. Even like when you mentioned earlier, even when you don't feel like it, find a way to seek or for that inspiration to strike, so you can just continue to put in the hours.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got so much going on. You've got the Female Entrepreneur Association, you've got the book, you've got now a podcast, and I just want to find out a little bit more about your how you manage your time in terms of productivity tools, outsourcing, automating things, because you strike me as someone who's all on top of that stuff. You don't strike me as someone who is just flustered and has so much going on and can't manage her inbox and has so many people to get back to. I mean, how does Carrie Green manage her time?
Well, that kind of is a bit of an illusion. I'm definitely not a type A. I'm definitely a creative person, and I struggle with being organized a lot. But what has helped me is having people work with me to make things a bit more organized. And like, for example, with the podcast, it's someone sets everything up for me and creates very good notes and everything, so everything is all streamlined. All I do is show up, do the podcast interview, and that's it. So that makes my life easy, and trying to find those people that can help streamline certain elements has been really helpful. That's being said, I have not got it all figured out by any means whatsoever. But often I find myself in weird transitions where I'm trying to go to the next level, but feel like I'm actually suffocating things and need to figure out how. I feel like I'm kind of in one of those weird phases actually at the moment. But I think it's just, we talked before about honoring the process of being an entrepreneur, and like you said about, the obstacles and becoming friends with them. And I really think that that's a huge part of what really gets me through, because I really haven't got it all figured out. And I sometimes don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I always just keep persevering and will try to do whatever I can to get myself back in that place where I feel positive and I'm really in the flow again. And I think that's, entrepreneurship is so cyclical and we fall in and out of these phases. And I just think my mindset is what has really helped me to get through it all. And yeah, like at the moment, for example, like I just came out of my book launch, going into the members club launch, and I feel frazzled, and I feel like I am in this weird growth phase that I'm not able to do it because I don't have the capacity. So I really need to figure out what's next. But it's been like a few like days, if not weeks, of like really looking inwards and trying to like get everything out on paper and trying to like piece it all together like a little jigsaw puzzle. And there are moments of utter frustration, but there are also bigger moments where I'm like, I'm piecing this together, and I know I am, and I know I can like keep going, and I can keep making this work. And I think it's that always helps me to just stay positive and to realize that it's all part of the adventure, and I signed up for it, and I've got to go with it.
Well, that's it. And I think that's what's really refreshing about your message. I mean, you don't shy away from saying, "Hey, I haven't got this stuff figured out. If I can do it, anyone can." And it's a very inspiring message. And I know that's something that I suppose you manifest through the Female Entrepreneurs Association. So, I mean, what can you tell us about the, shall I call it the FEA?
Well, it's just well, it's a platform I started in 2011 when I was feeling lonely building my business. And it's just turned into this incredible hub of over 400,000 women from around the world
Wow.
who are building businesses. And gosh, it's taught me so much. We have the membership site part of it, and yeah, it just constantly creating new content and putting the message out there that people really can build wildly successful businesses. That's it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Sorry, you were going to say?
No, it's just been an adventure. But I before, when you asked me that question about like being organized and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I find most liberating is that you can be really, really successful and be a disorganized person,
Mm-hmm.
or not have it figured out, or you know, not all the things that you're supposed to be doing. And I think so often people think that they can't, and that then they get stuck thinking that they need to have it all like lined out, and they you do the comparison thing where you compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20.
Mm-hmm.
Or you compare your back behind the scenes to someone's like front of stage, and you think, what is going on? Like, my business and life is chaotic and messy, and theirs looks so perfect.
Yeah.
Especially in this social media age that we live in. But it's just simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
just felt like I should add that in.
No, that's great, and I think I touched on a few key points there. And I think social media, in particular, today, it's very easy for teenagers and so on to see that as a surrogate for their own self worth, and invest so much time into getting likes, and then, like you said, looking at someone's front stage and comparing it with their backstage, and saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh well, how come they've got so many more likes, and how come their Instagram posts are getting retweeted, or you can't retweet an Instagram post, but how come their tweets are getting retweeted and all that sort of stuff. And that's something that I think entrepreneurship also serves to provide people with a much, I suppose, healthier place of self-validation. And again, it shouldn't come from outside. It should always come from inside ourselves. And that's why reading some of the books that you've mentioned and just investing in self-improvement and mindset type stuff just helps ground people and condition them for those ups and downs of life.
Yeah, definitely. I agree so much.
Yeah, and on you also mentioned some of the most successful people are probably not all that organized. And I was lucky enough to interview Tim Harford, who wrote The Undercover Economist, and more recently released a book called Messy, which basically explored that creativity is often underpinned by chaos, and how some of the messiest workspaces in the world is where some of the most innovative work happens, but some of the most orderly, clean offices, it's just execution and no real exploration, no fun, no sense of excitement and adventure. So there's definitely a lot there.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes us creatives feel normal when we all say that.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Read his book Messy if you're just feeling a little bit like, oh, I'm so disorganized, and you'll say, oh, I'm doing okay. And on the female entrepreneurship movement in the UK, are there any big names we should be looking out for?
Oh gosh, I don't really know. I feel like I live in this online bubble. I just see people in my own community. There are some amazing people. Do you mean just in terms of like people doing awesome things?
Yeah, people.
I don't know. I did an interview recently with Joe Fairley, who is the co-founder of the organic chocolate Green and Black. So I don't know if you have it over them. I'm sure you probably do.
Possibly.
Well, it's an organic chocolate bar, and it's now $100 million a year business. But she sold out to Cadbury's. But I interviewed her recently, and she's just the most inspiring person. She's like one of those people that has in the town she lived in, there wasn't like a decent like health food store, so she just created one. And then there wasn't a good wellness center, so she just created one. And then she just like creates all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, like that is someone who doesn't put limitations on themselves, and they just sees something and thinks, I'm going to go for it, and so does it. And I think after I got off the interview with her, I thought to myself, what would my life be like if I just went for it? And I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I mean, obviously to an extent I do that, but definitely not. I know it's not to my full capacity, because I feel like we are all still so conditioned to maybe hold back and to think through things and probably overthink things and then stop ourselves. But yeah, she just was such an inspiration, and I just thought, wow, what a powerhouse.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
But yeah, she's one to check out.
Yeah, and I like what you said there about, there's no wellness store in town, let's build one. That's a typical entrepreneur that sees gaps and problems, and ultimately something from her own experience where she's like, hey, I want a wellness store and there's not one here, so I'm just going to build it.
Yeah.
That's usually the way these things go, and it's important that for a lot of the budding entrepreneurs listening, that you don't just build something for the sake of making money, but you actually see a problem worth solving and something that you would, as a customer, pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like if you chase the money as a business owner, then it often leads to feeling incredibly unfulfilled and a bit empty, which is how I felt building my first business. I feel like the more you do something because you have a passion for it, or you feel like it's something that means something to you, it's far more rewarding, and it's a much better way to spend your life.
Yeah, and you're far more likely to get through those, troughs of despair when you're just not feeling like everything's going your way, if you're driven by purpose and passion over just the pound.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So we are down to the 3-question lightning round, Carrie. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I am.
Fantastic. So I'm actually rewriting question number 1 on the fly, because I usually ask people what company they would work for if they could choose. But in your case, because you are such a budding, I won't call you a budding entrepreneur, such a high-flying, let's just call you high-flying entrepreneur. I'm just gonna go with it. And as someone who is so invested in personal development, what is one book that you would gift to someone who was looking to get into entrepreneurship other than your own?
This isn't necessarily entrepreneurship, but the book that popped to mind was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's magical. I loved it. It's all about like coming up with ideas and like going for it, but in a magical way.
In a magical way.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Awesome. Love it. Question number 2 was, if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
Oh, bloody hell. I'm so terrible with these kinds of questions.
Hey, you can take as long as you like, and I can edit out the silence later.
Who would I ask? I really don't know. God, some people have like really good answers for this, like straight off.
They have. One of the craziest ones I heard was, I would go back and speak to someone like Jesus Christ, and not even speak to him, but just look in his eyes and get the measure of the man. And I was like, wow, that's pretty intense.
I feel like the only question I would ask someone at the moment is like more about scaling my business, because it's the one thing that I'm focused on. So I'd probably go and ask Richard Branson, how do I scale my business?
Hey, that's
funnily enough, I actually wrote that down. Find a way to ask Richard Branson how to do this. I actually wrote that in my book the other day.
That's awesome.
So yes, I'd do that.
Look, that's a perfectly legitimate answer, Carrie. Cool. And the last question was, and we've had a sneak peek into some of your rituals and routines, but do you partake in any other sort of daily practices to help you stay on top of your game?
I love to get outside and go for a walk and just get the fresh air and just really think through what I'm doing and just take a step back from it all. Really helps me to process the craziness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. Getting up, just moving around, just unlocks some of the those neural pathways, so you can have those breakthroughs.
Exactly. Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. You've left our audience with a hell of a lot of value bombs, and they can find out more about you at at femaleentrepreneurassociation.com. They can find you on YouTube at Female Entrepreneur. On Twitter, you are I am Carrie Green. That's CARRIE. Is there anywhere else they should go to connect with you?
Maybe Instagram or Facebook. Instagram's the same. I am Carrie. Yep. At I am Carrie Green.
Fantastic.
So yeah, but thank you so much for this. It's been so much fun.
No, it's been awesome to have you on the show, and I do encourage our audience to get onto Amazon as well and pick up a copy of She Means Business.
Thank you.
No worries, Carrie. Thank you so much for your time. You've been an awesome guest.
Thank you. Oh, thanks so much. That was so much.
Well, that's it for my chat with Carrie Green. That was a fun one for me. It was quite late at night when I interviewed Carrie, but nonetheless, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and the hour of the interview did not affect the energy levels, as I'm sure you noticed during this episode. Anyway, before I let you go, just wanted to remind you that the Innovation Manager's Handbook Volume 2 is now out, and you can pick that up on Amazon. So just head to amazon.com, amazon.co.uk, amazon.com.au, whatever part of the world you're in, and just look up Steve Glaveski. That's Glaveski, and pick up a copy of the book. You can get the Kindle version for free if you're listening to this on Sunday the 2nd of April. If you're listening to this after Sunday the 2nd of April, you have to pay about $4. So basically the price of a coffee for the Kindle version, and you can get the paperback version for the price of 2. So that's it for another week. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back next week with another awesome guest. Future Squared is out.